Hello and welcome to Film Family. And today we'll be discussing Child's Play, the new one that's coming out in theaters right now. And I think this movie was a movie I really had pretty much when I say no expectations, I mean no expectations. I thought this movie was going to be so bad. I heard Mark Hamill was in it, kind of piqued my interest. If you don't know who that is, he played Luke Skywalker and he also voices the Joker in many different Batman shows, movies, video games. And many people consider him the best Joker ever.
Yep.
I might be inclined to agree with that. I think he's a very talented voice actor. And he's done plenty of other shows and movies too. He was in The Last Airbender. He did a really good job. And this movie, Mark Hamill does a very good job. And I think this is a movie that seriously surprised me. I had, like I said, no expectations. I really expected this movie to be a failure. This movie was great. Seriously. This is one of those things where I was happily surprised, and I was glad to be wrong because it was funny. It was well directed. It was pretty well written. It was pretty well acted, and Mark Hamill kills it as Chucky. Now, when I heard the new idea they were doing with the AI and the kind of programming malfunction, the fact that it wasn't going to be the serial killer dog curse anymore, I was a little worried about this movie, but it really was something that I think is both entertaining, but also, if you're a fan of Chucky, can be enjoyed. And, it's a new interpretation, but a good interpretation. So, yeah, what do you think, Tosh?
This was a hard one for me, just because Chucky ranks up there with Freddy for me. Like, he's one of my favorite serial killers, I would say. I rank Chucky above Jason and all those.
Not above Michael Myers.
No, Michael's the king. Michael's the king. So you can't do. Then there's Freddy and Chucky and
Or Jason.
So for me, it was hard because I'm a purist in that way. Like Chucky should sound a certain way. Chucky should look a certain way. I didn't mind it because I knew it was going to be a reboot. But at the same time, it's like I was expecting to hear Brad Dourif's voice. Like it's so unique to me. Just like when they rebooted Freddy, I expect to hear Robert Englund's voice. Yeah, he's been Freddy forever for me, and so it's hard. I'm getting older, so I have to let go of certain things, and there's going to be another generation to claim it.
Reboots obviously being done more and more because it's hard to make original ideas for some people, but I do think that reboots are something that are so easy to mess up, and people hate the Friday the 13th reboot. Yeah. People hate the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. People hate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot. So that's 3 out of your 5 biggest horror franchises. But last year's Halloween reboot was really good, even though it was more of a sequel than a reboot.
I think that's the trick.
This Chucky reboot is really good, and I'm not even joking. I did not expect it to be good, but from the execution of him being kind of this more tragic figure who thinks it's just like the right thing to kill people because he gets to play with Andy, from Mark Hamill's fantastic voice acting to the fact that this movie had such good lighting that I was starting to notice it. And when you have lighting that's good enough for me to notice, that means it's good lighting because the uses of different colors, the camera work in this movie, it was all done very well. And I think the tension too. It's not a particularly scary movie. Like I didn't walk out like horrified, but I think the jump scare and stuff, they were done very well. They weren't overused, they weren't underused. They were used just right. And the kills in this movie, he doesn't kill as many people I would say as the old Chucky movies because he goes on like rampages in those movies. But the few kills in this movie are very creative, fun to watch, and again, they all have kind of the different aesthetic from the lighting to the location, and they're all pretty creative and pretty gory. So, I had so much fun with this movie, and, the cast did a good job.
They did a great job.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at this movie. I'm not mad at it because I know that they're still continuing the other Chucky lineage. This is not like a direct reboot and let's scrap the other stuff. I wish it was called something else, though. I really do. I just wish that because it was a great idea in terms of let's make it an AI thing. Yeah. I just wish, and especially when you have like a talented person like Mark Hamill who can do so many great voices and whatever. I just wish it was, something called Brian or something. Just not. It didn't need the Chucky franchise, in my opinion.
I think that's a fair point, but I do think it's one of those times where it's like there's a traditional idea and then you add a new layer to it. This movie kind of is not even that because it's more like you add just a new story to it. It's almost like same name but different story, so it doesn't have a lot of the same ideas. But I do think it's one of those reboots that it stays true in the sense that, Chucky's still kind of, mischievous and likes murdering and kind of is a little, he cracks some jokes, but he's also, he's less, I would say, evil than the other one because he's not really evil by nature. It's more by situation. He's, programmed to, be evil, and, he's kind of shown to be like a little sad because Andy's his best friend, and then the grandma calls him, she's like, Andy, you're my best friend, and then he hears that and he just goes on a rampage. But because of the situation that this movie was in rebooting a franchise that is kind of dead right now, because the last Chucky movie that came out, I haven't watched all the Chucky movies that have come out recently. I watched one of them. I was like, I don't need to watch anymore because, that was bad. But this movie really was, for me, like a breath of fresh air and sort of like the reboot that I'm not going to say desperately needed, but that kind of set them on a new course to make better quality films and stories that involve the Chucky brand and the Chucky, kind of name.
I have a question for you then. Because as you were talking, I just thought of this. So why couldn't this movie be Chucky 2.0? Like, why couldn't this be like, oh, the old company, got rebranded, and now they're coming out with a new doll called Chucky 2 or Buddy 2.0? And then I would have accepted Mark Hamill, being a new voice and whatever. And if they wouldn't have called the kid Andy and it was just some other kid, then I would have been like all on board. I would have been like, okay, this is a different time, different time and different space, but it doesn't mess with the lineage of the old.
I never think this movie, though, explicitly says that didn't happen. I think they kind of, it wasn't
it's
really
the word.
talked
It's
about.
when the kid's name's Andy.
Andy,
that bothered me.
But there's a lot of people named Andy.
That's true.
So it was one of those things where it's more like, oh, here's for the fans of Chucky. His name is Andy. I see what you're saying.
That's me. I have personal problems with that.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think his name isn't even Chucky. It's Buddy, and he just chooses the name Chucky. That sounds a little coincidental for me. More like they're just trying to make the movie
to the
good.
audience too.
And this movie isn't called Chucky or Buddy. It's called Child's Play, which the original movies are called. A lot of people think like they're called Chucky, but like I think that I see what you're saying, but I think this movie, it knows what it is, and it knows that it has fans of the old Chucky movies coming to see it. So I think it's more of just kind of a service to the fans and saying, hey, here you go. His name is Andy too, because we all know Andy from the original Chucky movies. But what did you think of the third act in this movie and the final sequence in the mall or the
You mean the store?
The store.
I enjoyed this movie. That was the problem. It's not that I didn't enjoy the movie. I thought the movie was very fun. I had hangups about it being called Child's Play. But in terms of like the acting and the kid bond in a way where the kids were bonding and that whole relationship with the kids and Andy not having friends at first and then getting some friendships and stuff like that threatened Chucky. So I liked it, and I liked Aubrey Plaza. I liked her as the mom or whatever, even though she didn't believe him at first, and it's
Well, this is one of those movies that I think when you make. I watched a lot of movies, so at one point I get a little tired of seeing the same story. Mm-hmm. And when you do a movie that has an extremely cliche story and is good, then you've done a good job with everything in that movie, because it is still a movie that never really did anything that like freaked me out or shocked me, but it always stayed entertaining and stayed like
still delivered.
Yeah, it felt like it was its own movie and not just a complete remake. And I think that's what a movie does best. And I did really like like I said, how Chucky develops throughout the movie. I like that he didn't start from one place and then end in the same place. Or he didn't start somewhere and instantly get to the end of that place with no growth in between. He almost felt like a way more fleshed out character than he had been in the previous movies. And this movie also took it a little more serious while still remaining fun. Yeah. A lot of the times they make jokes that like this doll is just murdering people in the previous movies. He has a son, he gets a wife. Right, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like, it's kind of a joke. But in this movie, they have their jokes, I think it's pretty funny. We were talking about before when he says this is for Tupac as he, kills the guy who's, cheating with the mom. Yeah. They didn't have to put that in there, but they did because it was funny. But the movie also makes you, realize that, he is dangerous because he's smart and he's an AI. So there's a reason he thinks so calculated and, he knows what he's doing because, he sees the world from a robot perspective rather than just a guy inside of a doll's body. And I also think that maybe my favorite kill in this movie was probably the guy on the cameras in the hotel with the saw and turning up the temperature.
Yeah.
That was very creative, where it just got too hot for his hand to stay on it. However, I will say this. I think the best scene of tension in this movie was when the grandma was in the car and the noise kept raising and you kept being like, where's Chucky gonna come? And you didn't know if you heard his voice in the car, then outside, and it was like, where is he? And then they finally got you. It didn't make me jump or anything, but I was just smiling because I was like, I like when movies do tension well, and that was a very good scene of tension.
It got a lot of people in the audience for me.
No, it was great. And the final act in the shopping mall, again, it could have just been kind of stupid horror movie stuff, but it was, I like the idea that he was hacking more dolls. I like the drones killing people. It was kind of funny. And, I like, too, that final scare where he jumps at him. And, I like the song, too. You Are My Buddy.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of a sweet song, but it was also funny, too, because, like Buddy would just murder people. And then you're like, do you want to sing the song? And just start singing it. And I do think the scariest scene in this movie, a scene that still makes me like, ooh, that's kind of creepy, was after he kills, I believe, the cat, and he stays, he cuts the head off, and he's staying in Andy's room, and you like see his blue eyes kind of in the darkness, kind of staring at you. I thought that was some good imagery, and it was kind of scary. And I really did like Chucky in this movie. He was definitely my favorite part of this movie.
Okay, there you go. Well, I enjoyed it too, and I think if you're a fan of Child's Play or you love Chucky, you will enjoy this movie. What do you want to give it?
I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10.
Whoa. Wow.
Seriously impressed, I gotta say. For a movie that I'm not even going to say I had no expectations. I had negative expectations. I thought it was going to be a bad movie. Everybody did a really good job. And like I said, the lighting in this movie, it's really good. The use of different blue and reds and, the different color palettes of each room. And I really did think this is just a really well-done movie. And, congratulations to everybody involved in making this movie.
Yeah, I would give it somewhere between a 6 and a 7. I'm not as generous.
But Mark Hamill did a great job.
Mark Hamill always does a great job. But I think for me, it was just, I couldn't get over the hang-up of comparing it to the old, but that's just me.
It's a fair point.
But
I still don't know if this is better than the original two because
I would
haven't
have to
watched
see it.
them
Yeah,
in
I'd have
a couple
to see
years.
Yeah.
But those movies are very fun.
Chucky was vulgar in the first one. Like that, I missed that. I missed the the swearing and all that.
And
but I knew Mark Hamill wasn't going to do that because
Mark Hamill says a couple inappropriate.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
He's not the equivalent of the old Chucky.
I was an old Chucky,
but he is learning to. He's become more. I hope they do a sequel for this movie, and I hope it's a good sequel because I want to hear more of Mark Hamill as Buddy / Chucky and. I just want to see more of this, this team in this movie.
There is room for a sequel, so.
Yeah.
Well, there's our review. Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.